Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Guzman, and I want to thank you for joining my session today. We've got a lot to cover in an hour. So today we're going to be talking about standards-based teaching, the process to increase student learning, and we're going to focus on literacy. So let me give you a brief introduction. I have been a principal in 4 low-performing, high-poverty schools for the last 35 years. That's my passion. I absolutely love what I do. I will not ever work in a high-performing school. I go into low-performing schools, and with teachers and staff and all the help we can get, we have been very successful in turning around for high poverty schools. So I'm going to give you that process today. We're going to go over what do you do when you go into a low performing high poverty school, or if you go into a high performing school, but they still have a large percentage of students not meeting standards. We see a lot of those schools across the country where the school is an effective school, but they still have large pockets of students that are not meeting standards. And so we're going to talk today about how do we address those issues. Let me give you a little bit of background. I was in two schools in Greenville, South Carolina, and then I moved to Charlotte, and I was in 2 low-performing schools in Charlotte. The last school I was sent to, the superintendent sent me into the school, and we had like a year to turn that school around. And so I'm going to share that process with you. At the end of the first year at Sterling Elementary School, we had significant gains in reading. And at the end of 3 years, the teachers were actually featured on the Today Show and NBC Nightly News. And Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education, came to the school to look at what processes we were using to turn around low-performing schools. So with that in mind, I just want to share, how do we do that? The first thing we do, there are only 2 ways to improve student learning. You can have small classes, you can have extended school days, you can put money into programs, money into everything, but there are really only 2 ways to turn around a low-performing school. Number 1 is to improve the core instruction, what happens in the classroom every day. And number 2 is you remediate skill deficits through small skills-based instruction. In these schools, you will have many, many students who have large, significant skill deficits. So how do we look at that? First, how do we improve what they get in the classroom every day? And then how do we remediate what skill deficits they have? Because many of these students cannot master grade level standards because they have such large skill deficits. So how do we do both of those things? This is my favorite quote: the best intervention is effective core instruction. That is incredibly important. And when we go into schools and visit through Blue Ribbon, we see that a lot of the classrooms are all over the place with their core instruction. First grade classes, second grade classes, it's based really, the instruction, on how the teachers were prepared in college for teaching. And many teachers had good college preparation and many teachers did not. And so how do we close the gap between teacher effectiveness? So I'm going to show you the last school, and I share this with you because I want to show you the significant gains that this school made. Now, this school is 98% minority. It has a large population of homeless students. All the students were either African American or Hispanic. 100% of them were on free and reduced lunch. So this school had significant. This school had not met state standard expectations for more than 5 years. So went into this school with a group of teachers and set up these processes I'm going to talk to you about today. And in the first year, 3rd graders in reading went from 26% to 65% in 1 year. 4th grade students in reading went from 41% to 62% scoring effective. And 5th grade students went from 39% effective to 49% effective. And at the end of 3 years, the school went from 34% being effective and mastering grade level standards to 74% in reading. Now, we weren't happy with that because we still had 26% of our students that we really needed to work with, but we did make significant gains. And in math, it was even more incredible. We went from 41% third grade in math to 86% in 1 year. 41% to 86. Fourth grade, 52 to 88%, and fifth grade, 77 to 83%. And in 3 years, we had a jump from 52% being effective to 86%. So it can be done. We have a lot of naysayers that say you really can't go into a school and affect change in 1 year. It takes 5 years. You can affect change in 1 year if you do the processes, you put the processes in place to make that happen. So today we're going to really focus on improving core instruction, creating small skills-based remediation. So my philosophy is that you have to plan out every step to improve instruction and increase student learning, and you can leave nothing to chance. Every step has to be created. You have to have a plan for every step. And I didn't put this on here, but this is really important. You have to monitor what is going on in the classrooms. So you can put all the structures and all the processes in place, but if you don't monitor it, you're going to be not as effective. You have to make sure that what is expected is happening every day in the classroom. So let's look at the learning cycle. These are the 6 questions we ask when we go into every school. These are the 6 questions that we ask, and this is how we set up our learning plan. The 6 questions are, what do we want students to know and be able to do? Those are the state standards. When will we teach it? That's the pacing guide. The most important one that is left out a lot of times is, how will we teach it? How are we going to structure the reading and the math block to make sure that all the components are taught every day in every classroom? The next question is, how will we know that they know it? These are the assessments. These are the formative assessments. How are we going to know every day that what we taught was actually mastered? And if it wasn't mastered, who did not master it, and what are you going to do about it? The next question is, what will we do when they don't know it? What are we going to do when they don't know it? This is where our interventions come in. How are we going to remediate the skills that these children do not have or did not get? And some of the students that do have the skills still can't master the standards. They need extra instruction in it. So how are we going to identify those students? And the last question is, what will we do if they know it before we teach it? And that's enrichment. Again, 6 questions. What do we want students to know and be able to do? When will we teach it? How will we teach it? How are we going to know if they know it? What are we going to do if they don't know it? And what will we do if they do know it before we teach it? Okay. Question 1, what do we want students to know, understand, and be able to do in every subject, every grade? Of course, it's the state standards. Okay, but you can give the teachers a list of the state standards and say, teach this. How do you know what's happening? How do you know what's going on every day? How do you know the teachers actually understand the skills that are in the standards? You have to help these teachers know what is expected from each standard. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, we look at the state standards in all content areas and all grade levels. We then unpack the standards to identify the skills in each standard, and then we create I can statements and standard checklists. We also communicate effectively to students and families what the standards are and how are we going to teach it. We create a standards-based progress report that goes home in the middle of each quarter, and we create a standards-based report card that goes home at the end of each quarter. Now, our district did not have a standards-based report card, nor did they have a standards-based progress report. We created our own in our school, and we sent it home in both English and in Spanish. And we also allowed the students to do student-led parent conferences, which was real powerful for both the students and the parents. So There are a lot of things you can do to make this happen. Again, you've got to help the teachers unpack the standards so they'll know what skills are in the standards. Some standards have 5, 6, 7 skills in them. Sometimes when you go into classrooms and you see the standard written on the board, how do you know that the teacher is actually teaching the skills in the standard? How does the teacher know what the skills are? So let's look at how do you unpack the standards so that teachers know what to teach. There is a document that it's done for you. They unpacked this district sat down and unpacked every standard, and it's an amazing document, and I highly recommend that all schools use this. The work has been done for you. And even though they're the Common Core standards, most states have taken the Common Core standards and just reworded them or put different numbers on them or whatever, and they still use them. So you can match these standards to what you're teaching in your state. So to unpack the standards, you're going to go to a document, and it's by Tulare, Tulare school district in California. And they have created benchmarks, and they have created all this information for each standard that teachers can use. I'm going to show you a copy of it in a minute. What does it look like? And then we're going to determine the grade level learning targets and the skills. We're going to write I can statements. They've already been done for you. I'll show you where to find them. Okay, so let's look at how do we unpack the standards, because this is what the teachers are going to teach. How do we unpack the standards? Well, first of all, we look at what are the standards? What are the main topics in the standards? Literacy standards, you've got your foundational skills, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. You've got your literature standards, your informational text standards, your writing skills, language skills, and your speaking and listening standards. So these are the areas in the standards that you're going to cover. So let's look at how do you unpack them. First of all, you go to Tulare Common Core Connect. Write that down. Tulare Common Core Connect. This is the site you're going to use. You go to the top of the page, and they'll have all these different subjects. They have math. Math is phenomenal. All of them are, but the math is really neat. But click on the ELA at the top of the page. When the page comes up, go to bookmarks, and it'll come up all the bookmarks for every grade level, and choose your grade level. Choose whatever grade level you want. Write this down, Tulare Common Core Connect. Go to the top of the page, find ELA. You can also find math for your grade level. Go to bookmarks, and then choose your grade level. Here's what you'll see. This is a first grade standard. They'll have the anchor standard at the top. First of all, they'll have the standard. After that, RL, Reading Literature 1.2, retell stories, including key concepts, and demonstrate understanding of their central message or lesson. So you're going to have the standard, and above it, you're going to have an anchor standard. What they've done is they've taken the standard and they've reworded it so it's a little better for you to understand what is the standard. After that, you'll see the essential skills and concepts listed. For example, in this one standard, you're going to learn key details. Students are going to learn key details. They're going to learn sequential order. They're going to identify and verbalize key details and main ideas within the story. They're going to retell the story in sequential order, and they're going to identify and verbalize the problem or conflict in the story and how the problem or conflict was resolved. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 7 different skills in this one standard. So teachers are not going to teach this skill, all these standards in one day. So they're going to take the standards and look at the standard and say, today we're going to teach key detail and sequential order. Okay. And so those are the 2 skills. Those are the I can statements. I can understand key details. I can understand sequential order. So those are the I can statements. Then in this document, if you look, they've got questions, stems, and prompts. So these are the questions. Retell what happened in the story. These are prompts the teacher can use to get the students to mastery with this standard. What is the story mainly about? What is the central message in the story? Very important to use central message, not main idea. Across the schools, the same vocabulary needs to be used in each grade level. For example, we start out in first grade, what is the central message? That needs to be carried through second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. No more main idea. What is the central message? Very important. That's academic vocabulary. What problems did the characters have? How did the characters solve their problem? What lessons were learned in the story? These are just samples, questions, stems, and prompts. You can come up with your own, teachers can come up with their own, but these are some that will help you with the students being able to tell you and prove to you that they understand and they have mastered this standard. And then the document has academic vocabulary in both English and in Spanish. So students need to know in first grade, what does retell mean? What are details? What is the main event? What is central message? What is sequence? So these are some of the academic words the students need to learn. This document is really, really, I think, outstanding. I'll show you another one. This is third grade. And this is the 2-layer Common Core Connect bench. It's called, I think, benchmarks. So we got the anchor standard, analyze how and why individual events and ideas develop. This is a reading literature 3.3. So you have your standard, and then at the top you have your anchor standard, which is another way of saying what the standard is. It's just helps you to understand the standard a little easier than the way it's written. And then you have your essential skills, which are the I can statements. So this standard has actually 4 different skills in it. Understand the sequence of events in a story, identify major and minor characters, describe characters, and so on. Those are the I can statements. So how long do you think it would take your students to understand the sequence of events in a story? That might be one skill you teach, just one day. Maybe they can do sequence of events and identify major and minor characters all in one day. It's up to you to know how much to teach in one day. Then we have the question stems distinguished between, and these are all the question stems that will help you determine whether the students actually understand this standard. And then you have, again, your academic vocabulary for this standard, describe. What does it mean to describe? Interpretation of characters, contribute, sequence of events, resolution. What does resolution mean? These are the words they're going to see on the state test at the end of the year. So again, I'm going to go back to 2-layer Common Core Connect, and you will find the standards unpacked for you. Excellent document. Also look at it for math. Very good document for math. So that will save you a lot of time. And we actually ran these off and gave them to each of the teachers, and they had them in a notebook so that they could refer to them or take the notebook home if they're writing lesson plans or whatever. But they are on that website, 2-layer Common Core Connect. Okay. Moving right along. Okay, so we know that we're going to teach the standards. We also know that in the literature standards, there are foundational skills that need to be taught. So the National Reading Panel, now this is where research comes in. The National Reading Panel back in 2000 hired numerous reading experts to come up and to determine the best way to teach reading. And they came up with these 5 areas that students needed to have instruction in every day. These are also in the standards, foundational reading skills. So every day the students will get phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Now, how are you going to determine how these are taught and how long they're taught every day? We'll go into that in just a few minutes. I cannot tell you how important it is that these 5 areas be taught every day in every classroom. Now, we will look at it in a minute, and we'll look and see how we set up our lesson plans to make that happen. So let's talk about I can statements. I'm going to tell you where to find those. Go to Curriculum Corner. You probably already use this website anyway. You will find all the I can statements for the standards. You will also find some standards checklists so that you as the teacher can check off the standards after you've taught them. You can also set it up by students, these standards checklists, to record whether the student has mastered the standards or not. Then you can create a progress monitoring sheet for each student each quarter, and I'll share that with you in a minute. What do we expect each student to learn first quarter in literacy, and did they master it? Then again, we create a standards-based progress report and a standards-based report card. This is a huge, excuse me, it's hugely important that you have a checklist and a progress monitoring sheet for each student for each quarter, so that you can monitor whether the students actually mastered the standard or not. And you know at the end of the quarter, which standard do I need to go back and teach again because the whole class missed it, or most of the students missed it, or do I need to pull these students over to help with reteaching? Excuse me, because the progress monitoring sheets are critical for each student. And I'll share one in a minute. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay. Again, what are we going to teach? 2, when are we going to teach it? Well, does your district have a pacing guide? Does it have a curriculum map? Do you have one for each quarter? And we go into some schools and they don't have these because the district has not provided them for them. But we will find one in that state. Like if we go into Alabama, we'll find a pacing guide from another district in that state, and we will use that because the standards are the same in that state for each school. So does your district have a pacing guide? Huge. That's when we're going to teach it, okay? So we know that we're going to teach the standards. We know that we're going to teach the 5 components of effective literacy instruction. We're going to teach phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. When are we going to teach it each quarter? We're going to use our pacing guides. Pacing guides and curriculum maps are timelines showing what each grade level team plans to cover in a year. Each subject area follows a logical sequence with a grade level and between grade levels. Most pacing guide and curriculum maps are created for what is taught each quarter. Break it down into quarters. Most of the curriculum maps that the districts do create are broken down into quarters. Now, I would always give the teachers at the end of every quarter or the beginning of each quarter a calendar for that quarter, and it would only have the dates for that quarter, and they would actually take the skills that they were going to teach from the pacing guide and put it into days on the calendar. So they used it to plan the pacing of instruction when they were writing lesson plans. That was very powerful. So if your district hadn't done it for you, because they'll say this standard, takes 4 days to teach. Well, take those 4 days and put it on a calendar for that quarter as to when you're going to teach it. And this really does help teachers lay out and make sure that they cover everything during that quarter, that they don't forget anything and that they spend enough time. Sometimes it only takes 3 days and the kids have already mastered it. Move into the next quarter. Move into the next standard and so on. And then you'll have some time at the end of the quarter to reteach some of these things that they didn't get. But anyway, use a calendar and record each standard, the number of days on the calendar. What day of the week in that quarter are you going to teach those 4 days for that standard? So we know what we're going to teach and we know when we're going to teach it. Now, this is very critical. Now we have to plan how we're going to teach it. The other 2 were basically not that difficult because a lot of the work has already been done for you, as far as unpacking the standards and looking at, the pacing guide and curriculum maps. And this is the one that was difficult for us until we looked at what does the research say on how you teach literacy. So we really looked at and dug down deeply into what does the research say is the best way for our students to learn how to read. We had many students who had skill deficits. We actually had one fifth grade girl who transferred into our school, and she was struggling with reading, and we gave her a diagnostic assessment, and she was in fifth grade and did not know all her letters. Now, I don't know how that happens, but it did. And so, what plan do we have in place? Because this is where you improve your core instruction. How are we going to teach it? And teachers were all over the place with how they were teaching reading. Things were going on, and some of it was good and some of it was not so good. A lot of paid teacher materials that were not anywhere near the quality that they should have been. A lot of this stuff we actually had to look at and say, wait a minute, this is how we're going to teach reading. Okay, so of all of the 6 questions, to me, this one and the interventions are the most important questions that you can answer in your school. So we're going to teach the 5 components of effective literacy reading instruction. We're going to create and use the balanced reading model. This is what we decided in our school. We're going to do a reading aloud, shared reading, guided reading, and independent reading. And we're going to use close reads to teach vocabulary and comprehension. And we're going to integrate writing instruction, speaking and listening, and language into our instruction. This is how we said, so these are the questions. How are we going to teach it? This is what we said. This was after much discussion with our literacy facilitator in our school and the teachers. We said, what do we want students to know and be able to do, and how are we going to teach it? Well, we liked the balanced literacy model because it had the read aloud, the shared reading, the guided reading, and then independent reading. And then we knew we had to teach the 5 components. And then we said, okay, where are we going to teach vocabulary and comprehension? And we said, well, we'll do that in close reads. Each one of these areas, we had to do a lot of professional development. We didn't just have the teachers say, this is what you're going to do. We actually showed them, how do you teach, I left one out at the top. How do you teach phonemic awareness? What does a good phonemic awareness lesson look like? Phonics, we actually had to buy a scripted program for phonics because our district didn't have one. Fluency, what are we going to do in fluency every day? We decided we were going to do, with the students were going to pair up and they were going to read the same selection 5 days in a row. And we were going to every day practice fluency. And in kindergarten and first grade, our fluency every day was going to be letter name, identification, beginning sounds, things like that. That is how are we going to teach vocabulary and comprehension? We had to vocabulary was one area we were really struggling with. So we had to do a lot of professional development on vocabulary instruction, and we decided to use Marzano's 6 areas for teaching vocabulary, but come up with a program that is really good with teaching vocabulary. It can be anything as long as it's research-based and it's quality. And then what are we going to do about comprehension? And this is really interesting because we said, okay, these students have to take a really rigorous test at the end of the year. So how are we going to prepare them for this test? Because a lot of it is comprehension. A lot of it, they're going to have to actually go back and reference the text. And so and I'll get to this in a minute, how we did this. We looked at released end of grade tests for many states where you can find these released tests on the internet. We looked at New York, Virginia. We looked at many of these released tests and how the questions were structured, because we wanted our students throughout the year to answer the same types of questions during their reading instruction with close reads, that the same rigor that they were going to have to answer at the end of grade test. So when we get to comprehension in a minute, I'll show you exactly how we did this. And then we're going to create a balanced literacy model. Each day, the teacher will do a read aloud where she actually reads to the students and acts like she's the student and thinks out loud. And she models for the students about how they should think about reading when they're reading. Then we're going to do some shared reading. Every day we're going to have guided reading. We had to level the students. We're going to have guided reading and then independent reading. And we'll get to all this in a minute. How did we lay this out? And then we had to do a lot of professional development on close reads. What is a close read, a good lesson look like for a close read? And this is where our content vocabulary came in and comprehension came in. And we also, when you're teaching vocabulary, and I want to make sure that you know this, you have to teach the academic vocabulary as well as the content vocabulary. So we also integrated writing instruction, how we're going to teach speaking and listening and language. Okay. So we created a literacy framework for each grade level, what is taught and how long it's taught. And here's the third grade one. We came up with phonics and word study would be done 15 minutes every day. We're going to do daily fluency. Once we got the students going, they'd have 3 to 5 minutes every day for fluency practice. And at the beginning of the year, they should be reading 70 words correct per minute. Middle of the year, 86 words. This is third grade, 86 words correct per minute. And at the end of third grade, 100 words correct per minute. So these were our goals. Then we had 20 to 30 minutes of interactive read aloud. And then we would go to shared reading, which would have been 10 to 20 minutes. And then we're looking at guided reading. We divided our kids up. Every teacher had 3 groups in her class for leveled reading, and they would do 20 minutes each for each group. And then we had independent reading. When did independent reading happen? Independent reading happened as a rotation while the teacher was working with a guided reading group. And then we really looked at the daily 5 rotations and did some really good in-service on what do our rotations look like? Because you do not want students sitting at their desk while you're working with a guided reading group doing nothing. So, well, our teacher said, okay, there are 3 things that we can really monitor: independent reading, listening to books on tape, and word study. So those were the 3 areas out of the daily 5 that the teachers said they wanted to do in their classrooms every day. So they set those stations up. Okay, so and then 10 minutes of a writing lesson, and then this is our model for teaching writing in third grade. And we did one of these for every grade level. It's a framework for teaching literacy standards for every grade level. For kindergarten, okay, so how are you going to make sure this happens? Here's the lesson plan template for kindergarten and first. Today, this is going to be done every day for every day. So they're going to have 10 minutes of phonemic awareness, and the teachers are going to actually write down on this lesson plan what phonemic awareness skills they're going to do each day. I think there are 16 phonemic awareness skills, and you do 4. We did a 4 a day, did it well, 4 different ones every day. Monday, there were 4 that they did, and then Tuesday, 4 more different ones. So what do we do for phonemic awareness? Phonics. Purchased a structured phonics program. It was 10 minutes. What phonics skills are you going to teach today? Fluency. What fluency are you going to do? In kindergarten and first, this would be, today we're going to do letter name fluency, or we're going to do sight word fluency, or we're going to do beginning sound fluency. But they wrote on this lesson plan what they were going to do. And then the vocabulary, what academic vocabulary am I going to teach today? And that comes out of the standard. And then what content vocabulary am I going to teach today? So here's the way the lesson plan looks. It's going to be a close read. Is this the first close read or the second close read? Because I want to know if I come in and I'm doing an observation, have the students read this before? So on the lesson plan, you put, which close read is this? Is it the first, second, third, fourth? What is the name of selection? Big Owl. Say Big Owl. What is the Lexile level? What is the standard you're going to teach? And it could be the number, whatever. The main thing I want to see are, what are the I can statements, the skills out of that standard that you're going to focus on today? And so the read aloud or shared reading, after you have your skills, how are you going to teach these skills? The teacher's going to do explicit and direct instruction to the whole class with the teacher modeling. So the teacher's going to model, make sure that they put down how they're going to model. And then they're going to list in order the instructional activities. I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And then what is the guided practice going to be? How are the students going to practice what you've taught? And then what is the independent practice the students are going to do? And then I have the teachers write down the text-dependent questions that they're going to ask today, and I want the depth of knowledge questions listed. Is it a 1, 2, 3, 4, quartile 1, quartile 2? What is the depth of knowledge question? But all the questions should be text-dependent, where the kids have to go back into the text and find the answer. And then today, what is the formative assessment going to be? How am I going to know that they know the skills that were taught? So there's a formative assessment every day for every lesson plan. How are you going to know that these students mastered the skills every day? This is something that is left out of a lot of lesson plans. So how does the teacher know that what she taught was actually mastered? Then she's going to take that formative assessment and look and see which students do I need to reteach because they didn't get it. So that's kindergarten and first. Now let's look at, let me back up a minute. Then we took all the kids, divided them into a guided reading levels, and they spent 20 minutes, the teachers spent 20 minutes a day working with each group. This is the lesson plan for the group. Group 1, and all the lesson plan is, what is the teacher going to do before reading, during reading, and after reading? So we actually took all of our students, leveled them with Fontes and Pinnell, and each teacher only had 3 groups. Now, there were 20 minutes for each group, and sometimes students were assigned to a different teacher in another grade. So while the teacher teaches a group, the students will practice the skills they learned in whole group. They will read, they will write, and they will do word work. And that's word study, phonics, and phonemic awareness activities. So how do you set up your leveled reading group? Again, the lesson plan is, this is whole class instruction. All this one right here is whole class instruction. And then you're going to go to your small group instruction. And you know what level the children are on because you've leveled them with Fontes and Pinnell. Here's the lesson plan for template for 2 through 5. You don't do phonemic awareness and phonics once they get into 2nd grade. They should have already mastered those two. As we know, many students have not mastered it. Phonics and phonemic awareness, that's where the intervention comes in. But right now, 2nd through 5th, instead of phonics and phonemic awareness instruction every day, they're going to get a word study. Word study every day. This takes about 10 minutes. Then we're going to do our fluency practice. 2nd through 5th graders know that they're going to do every day, they're going to get with their partner and they're going to do a fluency practice. They're going to read one selection every day for 5 days. And then they're going to record on a graph every day how many words correct they mastered. And they're going to do it with a partner because it's going to be a partner read every day. Then vocabulary. What vocabulary are the students going to work on today? What academic vocabulary and what content vocabulary? Again, what is the selection? Pythons overtake the Everglades, the Lexile. What standards am I going to teach? What are the skills in that standard? I do, we do, you do. What are my text-dependent questions that I want to make sure? And the teachers have actually, by grade level, sat down and said, okay, let's use, for example, Pythons overtake the Everglades. What are some of the text-dependent questions we can ask? And they've worked together as a group, and they've created these units, and they put them in a notebook, and they use them every year. And they add to them every year. But they already know what text-dependent questions they're going to ask for this one selection. And they've looked at end-of-grade tests from different states, and they look at the level of questions and the intensity of the question, and that's the level of text-dependent questions that they answer right here. And then they do a formative assessment every day. What did the kids actually master? The skills, the I can statements? How do I know they mastered them? And what students do I need to reteach? And when am I going to reteach them? Then we've also leveled all of our 2nd through 5th graders, and they have been leveled, and we spend 20 minutes with 3 groups every day. Word work, some of the teachers said, well, what is word work? It's actually word sorts, list words that belong to a pattern. There are many websites for word works. Some of the advanced word work you can do are compound words, inflectional endings, contractions, Greek and Latin roots, prefixes, all those. That's word work, okay? You can actually play the game I Spy. You have interactive charts. For example, if you're going to do plurals, you're teaching the students plurals, which is hard for them to learn. You have charts up, and each one of the rules for creating plural words is listed. And when the kids are reading it, you say, for example, children, I spy a plural word in the first paragraph, and the children raise their hand. I know what it is as children, and you say, go up to the chart and write it under the word, the rule for that word. And so they go up and they write it. The whole word changes from child to children, and they write it as a singular and a plural. This goes on all year. You could do this for prefixes, suffixes. The kids love I spy in compound words, and it's really good for them to go up and actually put it under the rule. They do that all year and they learn it. I was a third grade teacher, and I look back at how I taught plurals, and I'm very ashamed of how I taught plurals because I know the kids didn't get it, but they have to live it. That's a hard rule, how to create plurals. And so you have to have like charts up, and they do this all year long, and they know plurals by the end of the year. You can do it with contractions, compound words, prefixes, suffixes. Some of the things that I suggest that you buy are a phonics program, a structured phonics, such as Explode the Code. If your district doesn't have explicit instruction in phonics, you need to purchase a phonics program. And it needs to be taught with fidelity because that's where the teachers are going to get their lesson every day in phonics. Word work. The teachers were very concerned about word work because they'd never taught it before. So we actually purchased WordWorks by Pearson for every grade level, and every student had their own word workbook. And it really, really had an impact on our reading scores. Phonics should be an intervention for older students who are struggling with reading, and that's in 2nd through 5th grade. Fontes and Pinnell, or a program, any kind of guided reading program, is critical. That's where the students get instruction on their instructional level. All other instruction is grade level, to be grade level. And all students are in that room when grade level instruction is going on. They are not pulled out for any reason. They do not go to speech. They do not go to English language learning. They do not go to special ed help. They stay in the classroom and they get grade level instruction every day. I cannot emphasize that enough. We realized that we had students that were very weak, and they were special ed students, a lot of them. Some of them were not, but some of them were. And they were actually leaving grade level instruction and going to a resource teacher to get reading instruction in the room with 3 other grade levels in the room with them. And they were actually getting less help because of the model we had, the model we were using. So many of the IEPs were changed for push-in. The special ed teacher actually went into the classroom and supported with those students what the teacher was teaching. Made a huge impact. We did this for math. No one, I cannot emphasize enough, is pulled out of grade level instruction for any reason. You will put kids further and further behind by doing that. You do not swap teachers. You do not swap the grade level teacher for a special ed teacher for teaching reading. And our district did that. It was one of the, they can get reading with the resource teacher. No, they need additional help with the resource teacher. They need to stay in the classroom and get grade level instruction. Okay. These are some of the texts we had the teachers use, close reads, make sure that they use some of those. Phonemic awareness. I put this in this presentation because phonemic awareness is one of the skills that teachers overlook a lot. And research says many of our struggling readers cannot read. They're struggling because they did not have good phonemic awareness instruction. There are 44 phonemes. The students need to know, and they don't have to know the 44 phonemes, but 85% of our words are phonemically regular. The phonics to be effective, and phonemes must be separated from words. Phonemic awareness is listening to the sounds. Phonics is actually looking at it. Phonemic awareness is the kids can hear the sounds. For example, the f sound is represented by PH, F, GH, and FF. So in the classroom, instead of having a word wall, a phonemic awareness wall, I suggest you put up a phonemic awareness wall where the kids can actually look at it and they see that the FF sound over here on the right is the phoneme. And they can actually look up there and know what sound is made when they get to certain letters or combination of letters. Had a huge impact on students being able to decode words. Put up a phonemic awareness wall, put up the 44 phonemes on the wall, and then teach the students how to reference it. Let's move on to fluency practice every day. First grade and kindergarten got sight word interventions, and they got sight word phrases, and they got letter name identification. Second semester of first grade, if you have students that can actually put them in timed grade level selections. Second grade through fifth grade only got timed grade level, and I emphasize grade level. If you've got a fifth grade child and they're reading on the second grade level, they get a fifth grade selection because they're going to read it 5 times and they're going to start learning the words. And the first day, they may only get 10 words correct. The next Tuesday, they might get 15 words correct. And so they move up. It's a challenge for them. If they're on second grade level and they're a fifth grader, do not give them a second grade practice sheet. Do not give them a selection that's second grade. Give them a fifth grade. Every child has a grade level selection. We do not give them lower than their grade level. Sight word fluency, the students need to know. You've got kindergarten students in your classroom. They should know the 40 pre-K sight words and the 52 kindergarten sight words at the end of kindergarten, and own up. This is all the way up. And we've set this out because this is one of the way we progress monitor. We had this chart up, and this is how you progress monitor whether the kids have actually. So you know right now, you should know, your teacher should know which students in K through 5 don't know certain sight words because they've done a sight word inventory on them. And they know. And so how do we work in during the day where these kids get sight word fluency practice every day? And that one's pretty easy to set up because you can take the sight words they didn't know, put them on a ring, and have another student in the class get with that student throughout the day and teach, and they practice them. And when they learn them, you come up with a system to know whether they learn them or not. They had to be able to say them 5 times in a row or 5 times, and then you could pull it off. But what are you doing to make sure that kids know sight words? Let's go back to fluency. Each student has a folder with a passage. The passages are grade level passages. There is evidence that it is happening every day. They have a graph sheet where they graph every day what their words correct per minute were. And then you read the passage at least 5 times. And then I asked the teachers to turn in this. This is a class fluency report. So you had the students listed. This is a classroom, Miss Smith's classroom. She had the students listed, and then she had the beginning of the year. So she gave all of them a grade level passage. And this was what she did was she gave them 3 1-minute passages, grade level, and then she averaged it at the beginning of the year. And she got a words correct per minute for each student. Well, what did this student at the end of the first quarter? You're going to give another fluency test to see where the child was. Mid-year, you're going to give another one, and you want to be able to see these going up for each student. And what we actually did at the end of the year is looked at the scale score on the end of grade test to see which kids, and it actually had a correlation. We saw a correlation between the number of words correct per minute a student could read and what their scale score was on the end of grade test. So you're going to have struggling kids that struggle with fluency. And we see this every day in a lot of the classrooms. What is being done about it? So here you're going to have them practice fluency for 3 or 4 weeks. They have to practice it. Then you notice that they're struggling. So you're going to administer it's 3 selections. They're timed and they're 1-minute passages of selection. You're going to give them 3 grade level 1-minute selections, and you're going to average the word correct per minute. You look at the Dibbles chart and you will see there's a cut score. And if they're at or below that cut score, then they're going to need some extra help. So you're going to give them, when you determine that they need extra help, they're going to get a sight word inventory, they're going to get a phonics screener, and they're going to get a phonemic awareness screener. And that's how you determine the reading skill deficits that students have. Okay, moving into comprehension. Again, took some of the release state test, and these are some of the question stems. What is the meaning of blank is used in paragraph 9. What idea in the story supports the answer in part A? What sentence from the story supports the part A? Which statement explains why? And then they had like four things to choose from. Which detail from paragraph 3 and 4 helps the reader understand the meaning of the word anxious? These are the types of questions that teachers need to write into their lesson plans that they're going to ask every day, because these are the types of questions the students are going to have to see on the end of grade test. And right now we're seeing a lot of low-level questions asked in the classroom, and these students are not being prepared to be able to answer these types of rigorous questions at the end of their grade, on the end of grade test. So how are you going to prepare? You're going to take these release state tests and you're going to create question stems. And that's what the teachers are going to use when they're writing their questions that they put on their lesson plan. Guided reading. I know I'm going fast, y'all, but I had a lot to cover. Guided reading. So what are we going to do? So Fondas and Vanel, we actually looked and we said, these are the levels, okay, for guided reading. We're going to give a guided reading. We're going to give a, what is it called? A reading inventory. It's called, and we're going to level each child. This was the actual picture in the administrative wing of the school that had all 550 kids on it from every grade. And actually sit down and look at this. For example, we could not put the names of the students on these. Our district wouldn't level. We couldn't put pictures or anything. So if you look at we came up with a system where the blue ones, if you see the blue background, they're fourth grade. And then the dot on it, you'll see a little dot, and that's the teacher's name. And then on that white sheet, a piece of paper right there on the blue is it's the initials of the child. And you turn it over and it actually has, you pull it off, it's got Velcro on it. You turn it over and it's got the child's name on it. And it has beginning of the year, and then it has certain dates where the child was given another reading inventory to determine if they could be moved up into another level. And so we would move these kids all through the year. Once they left level J, we moved them up to M. So we wanted to see all these fourth graders and fifth graders moving towards the end. If you look, we still had some blue in G. We had some blue in F. Those were our really struggling readers. What did we do about it? They got 2 doses of guided reading every day because they were struggling. They also got more reading than anybody. Now, how do we do that? I'll tell you in a minute. This is what the wall looked like. Every child in the school was on this wall all the way across kindergarten, first grade, all the way to the 5th grade. Teachers would sit in front of this wall and they'd group their kids. Well, I'll take this one, this one, and this one, and this one for an extra dose. And these kids are doing well, so you take these kids because they need some enrichment. They actually sat in front of this and created groups. Question 4, how do we know that they know it? We're going to give, first of all, daily formative assessments. Every day, your teacher should be given a formative assessment. Then every quarter, we're going to give interim assessments. And we're going to progress monitor throughout the quarter. There are 2 types of assessments: assessment for learning and assessment of learning. Assessment for learning is it's going to help us as the teacher determine what we need to do to help these students. And they're not graded. Assessment of learning are summative assessments, and they are graded. So formative assessments, every day, we need to give these children a formative assessment so we know which children need to be remediated. What do we need to do to change our teaching? Maybe the whole class didn't get it. Is to promote learning, self-assessment. It gives students information about their own learning, and it gives us opportunities to close the gap between current and desired performance. There are a lot of reasons why you should do formative assessments every day, and they need to be quality formative assessments. It can be classroom monitoring of student work, short performances, observation, oral questioning, a simple quiz, short written responses, classroom lessons and unit assignments, end of class quizzes, not for a grade, whiteboard responses, or exit slips. This is just some examples, and there are many, 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 many of them that you can look at on the internet. How do you create formative assessments? These are some more. I'm not going to go over those. Interim assessments. They're done every 4 to 6 times a year. It can be like your dibbles, but you give them 4 to 6 times a year. But they're also to help you understand what students need to do and what you need to do as the teacher to get them where they need to be. Types of inter assessments. The district can have benchmark assessments or progress monitoring, end of unit assessments, student products or projects, so on and so forth. Dibbles, acuity, map. Formative assessments, we've got, they are to inform instruction. They're daily, and they focus on what your standard was taught that day. Interim assessments are determined progress. They're periodic, and they're slightly broader, and they're used to focus content and demonstrate understanding of broader concepts. And then you have your summative assessments. That's end of instruction. Here are some examples of your screening or diagnostic progress monitoring, formative assessment, benchmark assessment, and summative assessment. These are just some of the ones that you actually can use. Okay, so we said, okay, we do not have a lot of information about what assessments we have in our school, so we did an inventory, and we created this, and we looked to see the name of the assessment for reading and math, which interims we had, and this is by grade level, which benchmarks we have, which progress monitoring, and all that. And I'm going to speed up because I'm running out of time. What will we do if they don't know it? There are 2 types of deficits. One is they struggle with standards, and the other is they can't master the standards because they don't have the basic reading skills. So what are we going to do? We're going to administer 3 one-minute grade level fluency passages. We're going to see which words, then we're going to give them a sight word inventory. And then we're going to give them a phonemic awareness screener that you can find on the internet. And then we're going to give them a phonics screener. And then we're going to create a name, John Smith. These are the sight words he doesn't know. These are the phonemic awareness skills he needs to learn. These are the phonics skills he needs to learn. And these are the words correct per minute. That was his fluency score and the dates. This is for John Smith. This is for each student. Then you're going to take John Smith and you're going to say, first quarter sight words we're going to work on are these. This is a staff member that's going to oversee this. And how often is he going to get help in these sight words? Phonemic awareness. These are the skills first quarter he needs to master. Who's the staff member that's going to make sure he does that? And how often are they going to work with him? And you do this for every child, word corrects per minute. Look at the bottom, beginning of the quarter, middle of the quarter, and the end of the quarter. I want to know, you want to know, is his word correct per minute going up with fluency? So this is a year laid out for a student that's having struggles. These 2 sheets go together. These are the sight words he needs to learn for the whole year. These are the phonemic awareness skills he needs to learn. These are the phonics skills, according to the screener, he needs to learn. And then this is what you're going to do when he doesn't actually get it. You're going to create this. Oh, sorry. You're going to create that individual sheet. I'm sorry. This individual sheet right here based on this. And you're going to break it down into quarters. This is huge. It's a literacy IEP plan for students who are struggling. This is huge. I wish I had more time to go over this. Grouping students for literacy. I'm going to stop here in a minute, but I have to hit this. One of the things that I would highly recommend is that you ability group your students for literacy instruction. This is the best method for providing additional time and support for struggling students. And it's also great for kids that need enrichment. You put, and I'll show you an example of this. You have 4 teachers. One teacher is going to teach the high ability group, and you're going to put maybe 26 kids because you want more kids in that class so the other classes can be smaller. Then you got 2 teachers who are going to teach the average, and they're going to have around 17. Then you're going to have 1 teacher that teaches the below average. And those classes don't have more than 14 students in them. And they're going to have your strongest reading teacher, and they're going to have at least 1 assistant in here. Some schools have 1 average teacher, 2 below average teachers. Right here, they need more below. We did. because we had more below average kids. Here's the thing. If you don't ability group students, they don't get the explicit and comprehensive instruction that they need. They need more time and support. They need a more emotional support, and you need to scaffold it. And so these kids, in these low ability groups right here, they got reading and math all day long. Nothing but reading and math. We taught reading we taught science and social studies through reading. We looked at what were the standards for science they needed to know, and we subscribed to Science A to Z, and the teachers used that to teach them the science they needed to know. Made a huge difference. And I highly recommend. Struggling readers receive reading and math instruction all day. Science and social studies is taught through literacy instruction. No student is pulled out of the literacy block and math block for any reason. And I think I am coming close to the end. Oh, here's a progress monitoring sheet. This is the beginning of the year. This is a child. At the end of the year, this child is supposed to know 220 sight words. This is third grade. He's supposed to have a goal of 100 words correct per minute. And if he's at 80 or above, he's not where he should be. And in Fonda Spinell, he was a level M at the beginning of the year, needed to be a level P at the end of the year. So this is for one student. What sight words at the beginning of the year do they not know? Where are they with words correct per minute, first quarter, beginning of the year, and they were on level M. So this child knew 55 words correct per minute. They were on level M. Where are they at the end of first quarter? Where are they at the end of second quarter? Where are they at the middle of the year, third quarter, and fourth quarter? These are the goals. 220 sight words. So you put your goals at the end, and then you monitor whether the kids are actually meeting. Okay. Professional learning communities. We had 90 minutes every week for reading and a 90-minute one for math. And all the teachers did was look at student data and create groups, and they looked at student work. They reviewed student common assessments. They determined mastery. And I'm going to stop right here. Requirements for increasing reading: know the skills in each grade level standard, group students to provide additional and support for struggling students. The reading block has got to be at least 120 minutes, probably 200 for struggling readers. Purchase research-based phonics a lesson, define what is taught and how it's taught, provide professional development based on student need, use assessments for data, administer quarterly assessment based on your school's pacing guide, use data to assign students to intervention and enrichment, provide enrichment groups. If you're not going to ability group kids for reading, then you need to have a 30-minute intervention every day, and every child goes to an intervention group. Some of them go to an enrichment group. Make sure you use higher level DOK questions and do research. Released test items, go into there and look at the released test items and model instruction and in questions and performance tasks based on these released tests, because this is the level. If you don't know what level of rigor third grade kids are supposed to be able to master at the end of the year, look at the release test. Do this for math too. And then you also create strong PLCs to look at data, write assessments, and review student work and create small groups. And so I've come to the end of my time. I'm going to give you my email address. If you need me to email this PowerPoint presentation to you, I will be glad to do so. It's very easy to remember. It is schoolturnaround, all one word, @gmail.com. My name is Nancy Guzman. And again, you can reach me. I will be glad to send you this PowerPoint presentation if you send me your email address. I do come and work in districts and work in certain schools to make this process happen. So if you would like to, inquire about how we go about, making this happen, I can share some more ideas with you. But I will say this is a lot of work, but it will pay off in the long run, and all your students will be closer to mastery if you do these kind of things. I know I talked fast. I know I went over a lot of this very, very quickly. I could spend days just talking about phonemic awareness. I could spend days talking about close reads and how we set that up. So anyway, dig deeper into some of these areas and make it happen for your students. Again, thank you for being in my session, and I look forward to hearing from some of you. Good luck on your road to creating mastery for all students. Thank you.